There was once an American industry so dominant that a single state grew almost all of the nation's orange juice and fed a huge slice of the world's. At its peak, it filled 244 million boxes of oranges in a single season. It covered over 850,000 acres, the most concentrated citrus production on the entire planet. It was the undisputed capital of orange growing on Earth, the place the whole world pictured when it pictured an orange. That industry is Florida Citrus, and today, it produces around 12 million boxes. That is a collapse of about 95%, the lowest harvest in over a century. An empire that fed the world's breakfast tables has nearly disappeared in a single generation, and it is still shrinking every season. And here is the strange part. Everyone blames the obvious villains: hurricanes, winter freezes, housing developers paving the groves, cheap juice shipped in from Brazil. Those all hurt, but the real killer is none of them. It is an insect the size of a grain of rice, and the incurable disease it carries. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what it costs to own a piece of this dying empire, why the fruit has become a losing bet, and why a few people are still buying groves anyway. Start with the land, because that is where the story now lives. Florida grove land changes hands anywhere from a few $1,000s an acre to well over $10,000. And the price depends less on the oranges growing on it than on one cold question. How close is it to a city that wants houses? Or you plant fresh. Establishing a brand new grove costs many thousands of dollars an acre before you pick a single fruit, because you buy the young trees, prepare the land, lay the irrigation, and then you wait for years with money going out and nothing coming in. An orange tree takes about 3 years to bear its first real fruit and 5 or more to hit a full crop. A healthy tree can then produce for 50 years, which is why growers once thought of a grove as a gift to their grandchildren. So the tiers look simple: the small family grove of a few acres, the big commercial operation running thousands. Then a fast-growing third group, the owner who treats the grove as a land bank, holding the dirt until it becomes a subdivision. But whatever tier you pick, there is a cruel new rule baked into every purchase. In Florida today, almost every tree you buy or plant will eventually catch the same disease. You are not just buying a grove, you are buying a countdown. Buy the grove, and here is what comes with it. Whether you want it or not, you inherit the disease. Its name is citrus greening, or Huang Longbing, and it arrived in Florida in 2005. It is spread by a tiny insect called the Asian citrus psyllid, a bug no bigger than a grain of rice, and it works from the inside. It blocks the tree's vascular system, the pipes that carry food up and down the trunk, slowly starving it. The fruit drops early, and what stays is small, misshapen, and bitter, too sour to sell fresh and weak in the juice. Then the tree dies, and there is no cure, none. Every grove in the state is now living on borrowed time. So you also inherit a treadmill. To keep sick trees limping along and producing anything at all, growers now drench them in extra sprays and fertilizer, and inject antibiotics straight into the trunks. It is expensive, it is endless, and it does not fix the tree. It just slows the dying, one costly season at a time. On top of the disease, you inherit the weather. Hurricanes and freezes that would once bruise a healthy grove now flatten trees already weakened by greening, turning a bad year into a wipeout. So how is a grove supposed to make money? In layers, though the disease has thinned every one of them. Here they are. Layer 1, the engine. Juice oranges. Most Florida oranges are not eaten, they are squeezed. You sell them by the box to a processor like Tropicana, and you are paid not on looks, but on the pounds of juice solids packed inside each fruit. This is the bulk of the business, and it is the layer greening has hit hardest, because a sick tree makes lighter, weaker fruit. Layer 2, the premium, fresh fruit. A smaller share, sold to be eaten whole, which pays more per box, but demands the kind of big, clean, unblemished fruit that a greening-infected tree almost never gives anymore. Most Florida groves have quietly given up on the fresh market entirely. Layer 3, the leftovers, byproducts. The peel, the pulp, and the citrus oil become cattle feed, flavoring, and cleaning products. Small money, but real. Then Layer 4, the one quietly taking over, the land itself. Selling or rezoning grove ground for houses and stores, which in much of Florida now pays more than the oranges ever will. Here is the number that explains the whole collapse. Before greening, in 2003, it cost a Florida grower about $2.71 to produce one box of oranges. By 2016, that cost had risen to $10.40 a box. Listen to that again. The cost to grow a single box of oranges nearly quadrupled, a jump of over 280% in little more than a decade. Not because growers got careless. It happened because they were pouring money into sick trees to rescue a fraction of the old harvest. The cost per acre roughly doubled while the yield roughly halved, so the cost of each box exploded. Sit with what that does to you as an owner. You are spending 4 times as much to grow every orange, in a market where the buyer will not pay you 4 times as much for it. That gap is the vise crushing this entire industry, and it does not close. It just tightens. Turn the page to what leaves the account, and it is brutal. Your single biggest line is now fighting the disease. In Central Florida, the cultural cost of caretaking a grove ran over $2,200 an acre in a recent season, with total costs near $2,845 an acre. Then labor, scarce and expensive, to tend the trees and pick the fruit by hand. Then the harvest and the haul to the processor, both rising every year. Then replanting the trees that died last season, only to watch the young replacements catch the same disease. Then water, property taxes, and the storm recovery that now feels like an annual bill rather than a rare emergency. And underneath all of it, the cost nobody puts on a spreadsheet. Every dollar you spend on a tree that greening will most likely kill anyway. You are not investing in that tree, you are renting a little more time from it. Here is the trap, and it is what makes this business so cruel. In almost every other venture, working harder improves your odds. In a greening grove, it mostly just sets the price of losing. Follow it. You can spray perfectly, fertilize perfectly, inject every tree on schedule, and the disease still wins, because there is no cure and the psyllid keeps coming. Worse, your neighbor's infected grove reinfects yours. The doom is shared and contagious, and you cannot manage your way out of it alone. So the harder and smarter you fight, the more you spend, and the disease is patient. It has all the time in the world. That is the structural gotcha almost every new grove owner walks straight into. This is the one farm on this channel where effort does not beat the odds. It just buys you a slower defeat at a higher cost. To understand why this giant even exists, go back to the 1940s and to a fruit that used to rot in a week. Before then, an orange was a perishable seasonal treat. You ate it fresh or you lost it. Then, during the Second World War, the Army wanted a stable source of vitamin C for its troops overseas, and a team at the Florida Citrus Commission's laboratory, led by a scientist named Lewis McDowell, cracked the problem. They perfected frozen concentrated orange juice, freezing the concentrate and adding a splash of fresh juice back for flavor, and patented it in 1948. It changed everything. Overnight, an orange was no longer a fruit that spoiled. It was a frozen brick that shipped anywhere and lasted for months. Minute Maid put it in every freezer in America. Orange juice for breakfast became a national ritual, and Florida's groves exploded to feed the juice machine. Acre after acre planted to keep the concentrate flowing. One invention turned a delicate fruit into a shelf-stable commodity, and that is the empire that greening is now taking apart. And to see how that empire ends, look at what happened in January of 2025. One of Florida's oldest and largest citrus producers gave up. That company is Alico, based in Fort Myers, a grower of oranges for over a century and a major supplier to Tropicana. That month it announced it would wind down its citrus operations after the 2025 harvest and cut around 172 jobs. Its citrus production had already fallen 73% in a single decade, despite enormous spending on land, trees, and disease treatments that bought time but never a cure. Its chief executive said, plainly, that growing citrus was no longer economically viable in Florida. And here is the tell that says everything. Alico is keeping most of its land, more than 50,000 acres, and entitling a large piece of it for commercial and residential development. The grove empire is turning into subdivisions. When the biggest, best-funded grower in the state does the math and quits the fruit, the ledger has spoken. So who is still standing, and how? 4 moves separate them. 1. They stop betting on the orange and start betting on the land. They treat the grove as valuable dirt with a juice business attached, not the other way around. Exactly the pivot Alico is now making on purpose. 2. They bet on the science. New disease-tolerant rootstocks, trunk injection programs, and young trees grown under psyllid-proof screen, chasing the breakthrough that might finally beat greening. 3. They scale or they specialize. Either get big enough to spread the crushing cost per box across a huge harvest, or go small and premium, selling fresh, branded, direct fruit where the margin still lives. 4. They bought the land cheap and early, because even if the oranges fail completely, well-placed Florida ground keeps climbing in value. Underneath it all, the survivors quit betting everything on the fruit and started treating the grove as land with an income and a lottery ticket on a cure. So does owning an orange grove work? Let's run both sides. The good case. You buy grove land in the right spot for the right price. Maybe the science turns and the trees recover. Even if they never do, the ground beneath them becomes valuable development land. You win on the dirt no matter what the fruit does. The hard case. You buy in as a pure orange grower, in love with the fruit. You pour money into sick trees, a hurricane finishes the job. And in some recent seasons, growers without a contract could not find a single buyer for their fruit, while the costs never stopped for a moment. That is not a worst case. That is the story of the thousands of growers who have already walked away. So here is the honest verdict. As an orange business, a Florida grove is one of the hardest ledgers in American farming right now. A straight race between an incurable disease and a laboratory. As a piece of land with a chance at redemption, it can still pay. The fruit is the gamble, the ground is the hedge. For half a century, the orange was the asset, and the land was just the place it grew. The disease flipped that. Now the land is the asset, and the orange is the bet. You are not really buying a grove anymore. You are buying Florida dirt, and gambling that a laboratory can save the tree before a developer buys the ground out from under it.